What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Thou Shalt Listen. I'm Tyler,
I'm Hunter.
and today we got an awesome one for you guys. We're doing the worst video game every year of the last decade.
Yeah.
So this is going to be the worst rated or worst reviewed game of each year from the last decade, going from 2010 all the way up to, I believe, 2020, okay?
Yep.
And we're going to jump straight into it with the worst game of 2010, Deca Sports Freedom. So,
Never even heard of it.
this is the worst rated game from 2010. It was created for the 360 Connect and was supposed to take interactivity to the next level. The plan was basically to make it into a Wii Sports style game. This was a flop. The main issue is the game is incredibly difficult to navigate and felt insanely clumsy. It also didn't really build to anything. It became repetitive. There was no end goal or opportunity to advance and unlock things. Therefore, it became stale very fast.
Yeah.
2011. Flat Out 3, Chaos and Destruction.
Never heard of it.
So, Flat Out and Flat Out 2 are fantastic. They're amazing games. It's like a car game where you're just destroying other cars.
Kind of like Burnout Paradise.
Kind of, yes.
And stuff like
So you would think that to get a third installment, the game wouldn't be poor, you know? Oh, no. This game was universally hated. Metacritic actually gave the game a score of 23%.
How?
Yeah, right? It was an utter mess. Horrible graphics. The game was clunky. It was lots of wasted space and lack of real detail.
Jeez.
The gameplay itself is where the game really became poor. It was not smooth, poor dynamics. It was just not an enjoyable experience.
Jeez.
And then we move on to 2012. Family Party, 30 Great Games, Obstacle Arcade.
Well, apparently they weren't
So
great games.
that's a mouthful of a title. So you knew this was not going to be a good game. Now, games like Family Party are normally a lot better than this one. When you think of games like that, you're thinking of stuff like Mario Party and things like that, where those are universally loved games.
Or Jackbox Party.
Yeah, like stuff like that, where it's party games. This style of game is obviously designed for a young audience and for the family to play together. This game was riddled with issues. Okay? Sharp graphics, they don't look great. The entire game was filled with mini games that are utterly pointless. Metacritic rated it 11%. It's the lowest rated game of the entire decade.
Oh, Lord. I didn't think it could get any lower.
And then we're going to move on to 2013. And I remember this game because I played it. Ride to Hell Retribution. So this was like a Sons of Anarchy style game.
You think a biker game would be awesome, right?
The game was actually built around the idea of it being kind of like Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah.
Because Sons of Anarchy was so popular around that time. As they say in this article, even its biggest fans would not defend this trash video game. The entire thing is a total mess. It allowed gamers to go into the world of the hit show, but only if they were foolish enough. It was a low-budget game, but it doesn't excuse the quality, okay? It's such a mess that you have to question how it was even allowed to be released, with Retribution totally destroying this franchise.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we have 2014. Rambo, the video game. I remember this.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yep. You would think that with it being attached to one of the biggest movie franchises there has ever been, that it would do well. No.
Yeah, that.
This game was given a score of 23% on Metacritic, making it the worst game of 2014 and one of the worst of the entire decade. It was a huge disappointment. Sloppy graphics, terrible story. There's so much that could have been done with this, but it simply didn't happen. No memorable fights, no thrilling moments. It was just a cash grab. Well, not nice, but, you know.
Well, I mean, it's nice. How bad it sucked.
And this one was a disappointment for me. In 2015, Alone in the Dark Illumination. The worst game of 2015 was Alone in the Dark Illumination. The game series played a huge role in creating survival horror games. Like Alone in the Dark
Yeah.
are some of the best horror games that there have been.
Except
This
for
game was a
Illumination.
true disaster. Horrendous visuals, despite being a well-known franchise. But that wasn't the only issue. Everything about it felt rushed in order to compete with the growing franchise, and it missed the mark in every category.
Jeez.
The gameplay was sloppy, the story wasn't convincing. There's just very little about this to like, and it left fans of the franchise very disappointed. And I knew this one. 2016, Ghostbusters.
Oh yeah, Ghostbusters. Yep.
This video game release did not do much better. Normally, video game tie-ins are risky, and they normally don't like movie video game
It
tie-ins.
got a 30%.
Yep. So normally, if you do a video game that's tied in for a movie, it doesn't do well. Most of the time they end
Harry
up.
Potter.
Yeah, most of the time they end up being really poor games. This one didn't do much better. Scored 30% on Metacritic, lowest rated of the entire year. The game lacks in the humor expected for the game, and the shooter having dreadful reviews. The game had plenty of cutscenes, but lacked any real quality. It's a slog to play through, which is unfortunate for such a big franchise.
Jeez.
It's number 3, but it's 2017.
Vroom
in the
Sky.
Night.
I don't even. What?
This was a Nintendo Switch game. It was a downloadable title available for the console. Kind of like a bike, like the bike games you would ride the bike. It's like a magical bike game. You fly around and collect Stardust. Things didn't translate well in this game, okay? The game was a total mess, didn't feel complete from start to finish. There was very few moments of joy from this game.
That's funny.
It's just a bad game. Number 2018. Well, number 2.
Number 2018.
You know what I mean.
It's
The Quiet Man.
never heard of.
So this scored a 29%. The game didn't come from a small publisher. It was made by Square Enix.
Well, that figures. They're going downhill slowly but surely.
It was an interesting approach on the protagonist. The protagonist was deaf. So it sounds like a smart idea, but it doesn't translate well into a video game as the entire experience had no sound.
Wow.
Like, it's a cool premise. Your main character's deaf, so you wouldn't be able to hear anything. The downside to that is there's no noise in the game.
What was the point of the game? Does it say?
It doesn't. I remember hearing about this game when it was released, but I never played it. Like, it's a neat premise, but you kind of need sound in games. And then our entry from 2019, Eternity,
Oh, Lord.
The Last Unicorn.
The Last Unicorn.
The worst video game of this year, according to Metacritic, was Eternity, The Last Unicorn. 36% rating. Received mainly very negative reviews. The graphics of the game were good. Everything else was lacking. The RPG combat was difficult for many to get used to. It felt stiff. The camera constantly seemed to be pointed at bad angles. The game felt like it needed a lot of work, with various points not looking polished enough to be ready for release. With a lack of creativity and tons of sloppy mistakes, this game was one to avoid.
Nice.
And that's the 10 games from that decade.
We didn't have one for 2020.
Nope, but I'm going to go and find it. Because I can. So while we're talking, I'm going to go ahead.
Yeah, let's see if Tyler can find this.
We're going to look up the worst game of 2020, the worst game of 2021, and the worst game of 2022. So,
Worst game of 2022 you may not be able to get yet.
I have the list already.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a list of the top 10 worst games of 2020.
We're just gonna.
I'm just going to go to the number one.
Bottom ones.
This ad blocker pop-up is annoying.
Sorry, guys. We're gonna have to stop using this website.
It does it on multiple websites. All right. The worst game of 2020 was Bounty Battle. It had a Metascore of 23%.
Jeez.
This is the worst game of the year to start with. It had a wide release and appeared on all major consoles, but was hated on all of them. The worst of these scores was on the Switch, but it didn't fare much better on Xbox One, PS4, or PC. It attempted to be a Super Smash Bros. Of indie games, but pales in comparison in every regard. Abysmal frame rate, poor explained combat mechanics, Unintuitive menus, crude animation, and outright ugly in-game graphics made this game one to stay away from. So what they did is they tried to take characters from like indie games
Yeah.
and put them all together in a battle royale style game like Super Smash Bros.
Yeah.
But it was just really badly done.
The only game that's been able to do that since what is it? Not Metaverse. Shoot. I'll think of it in a minute.
I know what you're talking about.
It's the new one that is out.
But while you're thinking, the worst game of 2021 was Dungeons and Dragons Dark Alliance. It was the most disappointing. In as of now, it's not the worst game because they did release a lot of patches and fixes. But it was a AAA Dungeons and Dragons game. But this one, the functional multiplayer was about the only good thing. It's a buggy game. It needed another few years before it was ready. It has awful combat. Doesn't have a plot to fall back on. They basically tell people to just go play.
D&D.
Well, no, that's the thing. D&D is a story-based thing. You build your story as you go.
Yeah, but it's
The issue is
be you building.
the issue is they had no plot to fall back on. When you play a D&D match, the dungeon master is supposed to give you the plot of the story as you make it,
Yeah.
so you have stuff to play off
That's
of.
what I'm saying.
And this didn't.
Yeah.
So it was just a disappointment, you know?
Wow.
And then, finally, the worst game of 2022. We are not using Kotaku. We will scroll to the bottom of the list because they have the top 10 worst. I want the number 1.
Tyler will get us there.
We're going to work our way through it. Well, they did this list different, so I have to actually click a button to get through it.
Oh no, Tyler got to click a button. That's terrible.
Tyler's going to click a couple things. All right. The number 1 worst game for 2022
I didn't even know there was another
was
one of
Postal
those.
4 No Regrets. We've had a few, including reading anything about this game. It was a sequel to 2003's less terrible Postal 2, but not to 2011, somehow even worse Postal 3. It emerged in April, on 420 naturally, of course, because that's how they do these things.
Yeah, 420.
After a few years in early access with seemingly all of its bugs intact, Postal 4 is at least open about its terribleness. The pull quotes in its promotional material are as bad as the one below, but even fans of the franchise sense of humor weren't laughing about the new game's cheap and broken feel. Even Spellcheck hates this game, okay? GameSpot quoted as saying, Postal 4 No Regrets is devoid of humor and anything close to approaching fun or engaging mechanics. The only thing it has in spades are constant technical issues that only compound the game's lengthy checklist of egregious shortcomings. There's nothing redeemable about this game. It is a genuinely awful experience that should be avoided at all cost.
Jeez.
It barely came in above Crossfire X, though. Crossfire X was number 2 for this year.
Which, since I played Crossfire, go back to Crossfire, I want to see what they say since we have some time.
Crossfire X gets little to nothing right, and I don't take pleasure in saying that. On a technical level, yeah, the graphics and frame rate and such aren't bad, but you won't get to enjoy them because I think you'll be too distracted with all the other problems in the game. Voice acting, the script, the AI, controls, storytelling, the intense, lazy, and generic feel of it all, the push for microtransactions, the game is asking players to overlook or otherwise deal with too much. Now, I am an optimist and forgiving person by nature, but what Smilegate, Remedy, and Microsoft have done here is absolutely regrettable. This game has issues that even patching cannot fix, and I'm typically the first one to point out that games can often be much improved by patching. Crossfire X, though, has problems that run too deep and too broad, and I can't recommend this game to anyone.
Wow. As a person who played...
Playing it wasn't bad, and they even mentioned that like the graphics and stuff are good. The issue with the game most people have is microtransactions and clunky controls.
Well, I will say that for the multiplayer, because I played both sides. I played story and multiplayer. Multiplayer is just weird. It reminds me of the console version of uh Counter Strike.
I get that.
And I didn't even like Counter Strike, so. But story wise, I can't agree with him because I I played it and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I just wish we would have got the third episode that we were supposed to get
Yeah.
because it was done in episodes, but they haven't even said anything about it. So we'll see if it ever arrives.
Right. But that's all we got for the list,
Yeah.
man.
That was a good one.
That was the worst games of the last decade, plus a couple extra ones.
I didn't even know
couple
Postal
extra
had
years.
another game, so that was
Right.
weird to hear.
So we hope you enjoyed, guys. This has been another episode of Thou Shalt Listen.
And for the people on video, we'll get you some pictures of these games. I think Kyler can.
I'll try. I can try to throw some pictures in.
Yeah.
So we hope you enjoyed, guys.
We'll see you guys later.
God bless you.
God bless y'all.
Have a good one.